Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon, and welcome to the post 75, Facing Rejections. Now, this post comes via request from All in Art. An enormous hello to All in Art, who's been a great supporter and part of our community on our channel, and you are amazing. And she wrote me a fantastic message with all sorts of really interesting ideas for different posts, and I'm going to action all of those. But one of them was time critical, and I'll read you this request. So, dear Tara, would you create an episode about facing rejections and about conflict between personal values and interests and making it in the academic world? That's a fantastic problem and request, and the research has been very, very interesting that I've conducted for this one. I get asked a lot, if you look over the last decade, I get asked a lot to talk about rejections, but I think I was so moved by All in Art's request that a different sort of research was actioned this time. And I was particularly inspired by the way she framed that question, facing rejections. I'm interested in that word, facing. So what I've done today is very different. I've constructed a methodology for all of us as we move through life and bump into problems and things and issues, that we can apply this methodology to different situations and keep ourselves centered and calm and moving. And I also noticed part of this particular request, there's some challenges about managing conflicts, and those conflicts are personal ones between the values that we hold and what other people ask and demand of us. Yeah, and so you're going to get a bit of that tension through our methodological work today. I also want to log that I'm working and have been working on for quite a while, about 3 months actually, the post that is the next one, and that is managing academic emotions. So I'm going to undercook the academic emotion component of the gig today, noting that we're doing it next week. They're not tethered posts, but they do dance and talk with each other. Now, my reading this week was uneven. There's a good solid chunk of international research about rejections, particularly with publishing and how academics manage that. But there's a lot of sort of operatic material as well. The sort of, oh, woe is me, I was rejected. And the reason that sort of hyper-emotional stuff is present is because rejection is embarrassing. It draws shame and blame and fear and worry to us. So very hot emotions are attracted to rejection. So let's think about it a different way. Consider our academic CVs. Our failures, our rejections are edited out of our CVs, and they're edited out of academic life, and they must be hidden because of those hot emotions. But what this means for friends and colleagues, like Art is all, is rejection seems hyper-personal, and it seems really unusual because nobody talks about their individual rejections. But of course, you're not alone. In fact, almost all of academic life is rejection. Rejection is incredibly common, but just because it's common, it adds some oddity to the fact that it's so judiciously hidden. So remember that old cliche that success has many parents, but failure is an orphan. Therefore, what I'm going to do is construct this pretty careful, some pretty deep thinking's gone into this, to think about the methodologies to deploy in the moment when we are facing rejection, and how to sort of stop ourselves tumbling into shame and blame and jealousy and fear. And I want us to sit in the rejection. I want to sort of wash ourselves in the rejection, because I'm constructing a learning scaffold from rejection today. And my argument is that we learn a great deal from rejection, but the lessons that we learn are not the lessons that the higher education system wants us to learn. But as All in Art has confirmed here, through rejection we start to learn about our academic values. So let's be overt in this knowing, in this consciousness, in this literacy development. Let's provide really concrete and clear strategies to sit in rejection and learn from it without tumbling into those hot emotions. So yes, we are doing Tara's 10 tips when facing rejection. Tip 1, crucial. Rejection provides us with information. Rejection is about us, but it is about us with new information. And that new information may be about publications, it may be about grants, it may be about funding, it may be about promotions, it may be who we can trust in our organisation. So this is great. The best way to face rejection is to use it to build information and to build an information scaffold and information literacy. What you need to do to enable this particular methodology is you must slice the emotion away. So when rejection happens, you have been given information. So what you have to do with that information is acknowledge that it is information, then contextualize it, understand what's the context around that information, and then find strategies to deploy it and use it. Now, that information may be about people, it may be about systems, and it may be about structure. So let me give you an example, and I've never talked about this publicly. There's a lot of sort of quiet knowledge we're going to talk about today that is hidden, but we're not going to hide it today. We're not going to hide it this week. We're going to talk about it. So let me give you an example, and this comes from my late husband, Steve Redhead, and this was an odd period of our lives. He had a British chair, very famous human being, developed all sorts of disciplines, and he was being asked to apply for very senior posts in Australia, in the creative industries in particular. He was one of the world leaders in creative industries. He was a consultant for Tony Blair to build up the relationship between art, media and sport, noting Steve was one of the founders of entertainment law. Okay, now at this point, Australia was about, conservatively, 5 years behind the United Kingdom in creative industries. And there were a lot of pretenders in Australia, particularly in two specific states, who were desperate to get the ARC funding, to sort of use the phrase creative industries as often as they could, when they didn't actually know what it was, didn't do the hard yakka work, and basically had creative arts with a little bit of media and went, yes, that would be creative industries, and to use the ARC, public funding, to try and get on with their career without having done the hard political economy work. Okay, now Steve was the real deal, and he only even considered moving to Australia because he accidentally sort of married me. But something very strange started to happen. Remember, he was asked to apply for these posts, and he applied and didn't get them, and that's okay, rejection. Let's get some information about rejection. But when he was trying to get that information, all sorts of PVCs and DVCs and VCs started to scuttle away from the scene. Very odd. So we weren't able to get any information. So we went, right, well, we got no information. We don't know what's going on. So we both decided, okay, well, we'll go to the United Kingdom. We'll go get some posts in the UK and enjoy our life there. Sad for Australia, but, party on Garth, let's go. But the interesting thing is we were able to get some information about what happened, and this information was gained secondhand from one of my former students. The great gift of having 200 plus PhD students is that they populate posts around the world. So I hear a great deal. And one of my former students was at a Christmas party in one of these universities in one of these states. She's a non-drinker, but can I say it was a pretty hard drinking Christmas party. And one of these senior lushers told my former student, and of course anybody within earshot, that, quote, Steve Redhead will never work in Australia. We won't let him. He'll hoover up our research funding. End of quote. Interesting phrase, our research funding. Actually, no Australian taxpayers provide that money. It must be about excellence and international standards, but hashtag moving on. So remember that rejections give us all information, and we need to gather up, learn from that information and move on with our lives. And that story does have a couple of really weird endings. The first is that particular drunken lush that gave my former student that information, unbelievably, wrote Steve an email about 5 months into our new British posts and asked him to write a commendation for his new book on Virilio to help that book sell in the European market. Now, wonderfully, Steve said no, and then explained why he said no by quoting this gentleman back to himself from that drunken party. But secondly, Steve did work again in Australia about a decade later, and we came in through the back door of regional universities. But of course, by the time we had returned, all those pretenders in the creative industries had hoovered up their research funding. But of course, as determined by the ERA and international standards and citations, they produced absolute rubbish. The universities were getting 2s in terms of research ranking. So they'd got the money, they'd got the money, but of course they'd produced absolute rubbish. And the Australian humanities has never really caught up to the rest of the world after that really dreadful first decade of this century. But look, they won their money, rock and roll, and Steve is dead. But we were able to take the information from that rejection, and I still carry those names and those people and that information through my daily life. So may you do the same. 2, remember that rejection is common, and really manage your relationship with LinkedIn. Okay, the reason that rejection feels so shocking is because we all assume that we're alone and that we're the only people sitting in this shame of failure. But actually, rejection is much more common than success. But because we don't hear about it, we sit in that individual pain and don't develop strategies to use it. Now, LinkedIn is absolutely implicated in this. LinkedIn is a mess. I cannot believe how absolutely ridiculous LinkedIn is. Now, yes, I use it once a week to disseminate these vlogs, but I make sure the rest of the time I disconnect from the rubbish. Basically, if someone successfully opens an envelope, they announce it on LinkedIn. Now, of course, the great people, the great scholars don't crow, don't have to speak of their achievements because they don't have to. They know they're good enough. They know their value. They don't require other people and their likes and their loves and their comments to fill them up. So what we need to do is turn down the circus that is living around us and focus on keywords like integrity and truth, and yes, use silence. The benefits of sitting in silence, of reading and thinking and writing, means that we start to fill up our own sense of self on our own terms, and we don't require the views of other people to make ourselves whole. So establish clear rules for yourself today in your engagement with LinkedIn. And yes, have a regular post once a week, that's fine. But no one needs to know that you've opened an envelope. Seriously, stop it. No one cares. No one cares. And know that the great scholars don't do this because they don't have to. So what LinkedIn is doing at the moment is it's constructing an ideology where success is common and rejection is invisible. So don't believe this interface, don't believe the people that post on this interface. They are constructing a version of themselves for construction and consumption by others. This is not real. Rejection is common. And what we need to do is use it to gather up information to guide us into future directions. do not care at all about the front stage, Goffman, don't care about the front stage created by others. People lie, and they particularly lie through editing their lives for the consumption for other people. So other people's success, other people's failures have nothing to do with you. Disconnect from the opinions of others, disconnect from the facades that other people construct about their lives. 3, use rejection to improve your work and disconnect the personal from the professional. Here we go. So as a teacher, as a researcher, as a writer, as a scholar, our goal is to improve. Now, feedback is important. It is one way to improve. So when rejected, always ask for feedback. So with referee reports, every single referee report can help us and can improve the work. Now, I'll talk about the caveat right now to the statement I've just made. Referee reports, peer review, crucial, fantastic, improves our work, fantastic. Now, I know it doesn't feel like that at the moment. We've got generative AI creating the most bizarre peer reviews I've ever seen. It's funny, but also the personal rubbish when somebody on the editorial board will let the article through if you cite them. So they're often called coercive citations. So I understand we have dreadful people behaving badly, but we need to use the rejection to focus on the work. You are not your work. You are not your research. You are not your teaching. You as a human being are distinct from the products and outputs that come from you. So deploy rejection as a way to get information about your outputs. You are not a better or worse human being because of that rejection, but use the information to improve your outputs. 4, have lots of irons in the fire. Now, I've used this strategy since I was 21, 22 and enrolled in my first master's degree. Now, I hate cliches, but, always make sure there are multiple irons in the fire. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. These cliches exist for a reason. And one of the reasons I use my annual whiteboard, and big shout out to everybody who joined us from all around the world for the annual whiteboard soiree. But the reason I've done that since my very early 20s is I plan out my entire research year. And the only goal of that whiteboard, its methodology, is to move publications down the board. So when I was in my 20s, my target was try and always have about 5 articles under review at one particular time. So 5 were always circulating. And so, okay, one got knocked back, cool. Get those referee reports, get the information, make the improvements, send it out again. So we're using the information to improve the work via peer review. So the whiteboard is useful for this strategy because it allows you to see on your own terms progress and movement. Therefore, a rejection is not a big deal at all. It's giving you more information and it's moving ideas down your whiteboard. So this means you also don't invest too heavily in any publication, any output, any conference, any event, any job. There are plenty of articles to write, plenty of conferences to go to, plenty of jobs to do. Right. Rejection, you see, attempts to lock us into a scarcity mindset or framework. So the scarcity mindset is, if I fail, someone else succeeds. And of course, if someone else succeeds, it's because I failed. Now, success is not a finite resource, but work is a decision that we make. So make a decision every morning to get up and work. You have control over that. You are controlling your own life through the decisions to enact work. Do not allow any other human being to impose this scarcity thinking on you, making you feel small, making you feel like there are very few options available. Every single day, there are hundreds of options available to you. Do not allow other people to impose their scarcity mindset on you. Start to use what I describe as an abundance mindset. Right. 5. Always contextualize rejections and don't be dragged into the worldview of others. Rejection, I know, dents our sense of self. We do feel emotionally wounded. Therefore, don't go into any rejection scenario sort of unprepared. What I need you to do is, if there's any chance of a rejection happening, and of course if you do anything in life there's a chance of rejection happening, go into it with a semiotic prophylactic. Now my mantra, my semiotic prophylactic is you are enough and you are exactly where you need to be. And I've used that almost all of my adult life. You are enough and you are exactly where you need to be. It calms the farm. Right, cool. You see, ambition wastes time. There's that old lyric from Tim Finn from his song Haul Away from the Time and Tide album, great album. And the lyric that Tim Finn constructed was, quote, ambition has cost me friends and time. Ambition has cost me friends and time. So ambition is delusional, it's ego-fueled, and it's completely self-absorbed. So I have, as I'm sure all of us have, I've worked for some dreadful, incompetent, corrupt, destructive, and ambitious people. And as I've been preparing this particular post, I've thought back on all those dreadful people and tried to work out if they had something in common. And they do. And what they have in common is they want you to care about what they care about. So they want you just to exhaust your life, exhaust your time working for them to improve their success, their outputs, to invest in them. Exchange your life for their life. Okay. And they use all sorts of techniques to try to get you to be invested in them. And it can include bullying, gaslighting, and all sorts of really dreadful social media posts to make you feel small. So what they're trying to do is to pretend that their worldview that places them in a position of power over you is real. It's not real. It's gaslighting. This alternative worldview that sucks time away from you is delusional, is dangerous, and we all need to keep away from these people. They will do anything to be successful. They will lie, they will fabricate, they will take shortcuts. And that's problematic in all areas of life, but particularly with regard to research integrity investigations are based on these people fabricating results and taking shortcuts, and careers will be destroyed through this. So the way you handle that boss with those delusional ambitions is to create a clear separation of personal and professional space. Now, they will blame you for everything that goes wrong, and every success you have, they will claim. So this tip asks you to really have a good look at rejection, particularly if it's being imposed from a bad boss or a bad line manager, and ask if they're actually displacing their errors onto you. And this is increasingly common. Remember, I've studied with the wonderful Jamie Quinton, the actual senior leadership in universities, not ideologies, not vibes. We've looked at the quant outputs, what is going on here, rather than sort of, the front stage biography that they construct. And look, there is a vice chancellor in the Antipodes with a career of only 14, let me say that again, only 14 co-authored articles in their entire career in a high-site, high publication field. There are 3 vice chancellors in the Antipodes without a PhD. So how are these people without a PhD going to fulfill their institutional requirements in research integrity investigations? Remember, they're required to be the REO, the Responsible Executive Officer. So how are they doing research integrity work when they haven't got the most basic? The PhD is the most basic and straightforward research project we do in our lives. Basic, straightforward, and they don't even have that. So therefore, you need to start to contextualize all of these rejections to obtain accurate and relevant information. And how we all in life obtain accurate and relevant information is we must verify the source of that information. So have a look at that person. Have a look at that person's achievements. Have a look at that person's life. The person that's offering you feedback, look at them. Have a good contextualized look at their career. Do you respect them? Are they behaving in your interests? And if not in your interests, are they at least behaving in the interests of a discipline or knowledge or the university? Or, of course, are they simply behaving in their own interest and displacing and shaping and moving away errors that they've made onto other people? So every rejection provides you with valuable information, but that valuable information may be you cannot trust that person. Now, this has been a very common experience for a lot of us in the last 20 years. The information that is being provided by a senior person confirms that they are lying, confirms that we cannot trust them, and that they are ambitious, and they're so ambitious that they will crawl over broken bodies to be successful. So do your homework. All rejections have a context, and considering the state of our universities right now, with some very, 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 very strange appointments, we need to evaluate the credibility of the person that is telling you about your failure, your rejection from an appointment, a publication, a promotion. Now, I used to be horrified when Steve used to actually say stuff like, "I'm sorry, I've never heard of you," or "I'm sorry, who are you?" And I go, "You can't say that. You can't say that." And I used to just sort of shake my head. But in some ways, that's a great response to have silently going in our head. So someone says the unsayable to us, and we sort of look at them, and in our head it goes, "I'm sorry, who are you? I'm sorry, I've never heard of you." And that calms the farm. Remember, when a third-rate human being, an unqualified human being, offers you commentary, start to have these sentences playing in your head. "I'm sorry, I don't know who you are." So do not believe that other academics have your best interests at heart. They may, but they need to prove that. They need to verify that. So you need to contextualize every single rejection, and it is a proxy, I think, for a problematic rejection. If this helps you, if you need a proxy for, is this real? Is this rejection real? Is this feedback important? Then what you need to do is look at if the person that is presenting the rejection to you, look at if they're playing the person, the man, not the ball, the man, the woman, the non-binary identifying person, rather than the ball. And by that I mean they're offering emotional commentary about you as a person rather than professional commentary about your work. So if they're offering personal stuff like, "People don't really seem to like you," or "Why's your hair like that?" or "People are watching what you're doing and they don't really like it very much." All this sort of, that's gaslighting, right? So anything that's about playing the man, not the ball, that's about undermining someone's personal efficacy, watch that. And from that point, you know they can't be trusted. So this is a serious issue. Professional rejection is activated with these sorts of people in an attempt to push down your career and to mask the errors of a senior person that should never have been put in that position. So the problem with incompetent people being in positions of power and making catastrophic mistakes, and we see this in research integrity, we see it in academic integrity, we also see it at the moment with incompetent people spending, and I mean literally millions of dollars on interfaces, educational systems that don't work because they don't know what they're doing, they've got no educational qualifications, and they're spending millions of dollars because they don't have the expertise to assess a learning management system. And of course, what happens? Millions of dollars are spent, and then where's that money going to come from? That's when the restructures, the sacking of academics and professional staff emerges. So this incompetence has a profound consequence for international higher education. So it's important to remember we all have lines in our lives. What is ethical? What is academic integrity? What is research integrity? And they're informed by international policy procedures and guidelines. But you need to know that line and do not allow it to be minimized or managed by failing academics in positions of power that they should never have been placed in. And they will use emotion to get you into trouble and to release them from blame. So rejection is a strategy to make you feel vulnerable. So therefore what you need to do is separate the self from work and emotion from intellect. Cool. 6. Rejection is a powerful professional pointer. Now, all of us in our daily lives confront rejections, and all in are worried because it seemed like rejections were happening to her and they weren't happening to everybody else around her. And of course, that's wrong. Rejection happens much more often than success, and it happens to everybody, but it is hidden. And Steve Shaw described rejection as, quote, the shadow CV, which I like a lot. So rejections are like the shadow in our academic lives. But rejections are also powerful pointers in our lives. And let me give you an example. So this is a personal example of profound rejection. Let's do this. So I had a book that I'd written called From Revolution to Revelation. Now, I had written it, it was complete. I've got 21 books, 19 of them have been written without a publisher, and then I sent it to a publisher as a complete project for their assessment. And so this was a complete book, and I sent it out. And I sent it out to 23 publishers. Now, I was a humble senior lecturer. I was a bunny, right, in Perth in Western Australia. No one's ever heard of me. No one's ever heard of the state. No one's ever heard of the university. I am nothing. And so because I am nothing, I sent it to Australian university presses and Australian publishers. And through my underconfidence, really, I received 23 rejections, and some of them were pretty brutalising, from these sort of minor Australian university presses and Australian publishers. So remember, this was my 5th book. I'd already written 4, and they'd sold incredibly well, okay? But so I was in local mode, and I was in humble mode, and I was really underconfident, and then I got 23 rejections. Now, after 23 rejections, because I am a Brabazon, I said a very offensive version of the phrase "stuff it" and sent it to the best publisher in the world, the publisher that changed my life, the publisher that built Popular Cultural Studies. And that publisher was Ashgate. So I sent it to the best publisher for this book in the world. Stuff it. And unbelievably, after 23 rejections in this local little Australian mode, the dream publisher in the UK read it, loved it, sent it out to referees who loved it, commissioned it, did the best cover I've ever seen, really promoted the book, and that book changed my life. So remember that rejections are also a pointer. They're giving you information, and that information may be you are in the wrong place. That information may be the information system that you are deploying to make this decision is incorrect. So make a change. Don't live in local mode. Don't live with scraps from the table. Don't believe what third-rate pretenders are telling you. Center yourself and use rejections as a pointer. 7. Sometimes There is absolutely no reason for the rejection. Now, in life, we all tend to look for meaning and mattering. What does that mean? Why does this matter so much? Now, sometimes, and we'll never really know how often this is, a rejection has absolutely nothing to do with you. So, okay, you missed getting a post. We need to remember how many posts, perhaps a third, perhaps even more, how many posts are already filled before an advertisement appears in the press. Yep. So remember the Peter principle. Incompetent people put other incompetent people around them so that their mediocrity is not discovered. Okay. So then we get into the matter of fit. Fit. Very interesting word that I'm doing work on at the moment. There may be a future post on this, but so the word fit has been deployed in the last couple of years in a really interesting way. And I'm doing research particularly on how fit is being used in boards or trustee appointments. So the justification for the rejection of a great person is fit. That is, thank you so much for your application. We found a better fit for that organisation. So what this means is, what's that code for? The person making the selection found somebody just like them to make themselves feel comfortable. That's what fit is. Homology. We like that which is our like. Okay. And that's why we still to this day have very narrow sociological selections for leadership posts and also board and trustee posts as well. So instead of saying sort of the more honest answer, which is, I'm hiring people just like me because I'm tremendous. Now, of course, it's delusional, but at least that's sort of honest. Like, I'm fabulous in my own mind, and so I'm hiring people who are just like me. But instead of having that honesty, the code word to describe that process is quote unquote fit. So when you are rejected and the word fit is used in the explanation, remember that that process has had nothing to do with you at all, and there is nothing to learn from that particular rejection. That is about a line manager putting other people like them in the organisation. So when you hear the keyword fit, no, there's nothing to learn from that rejection. Okay, 8, do not dip into jealousy. One response to rejection is to be incredibly jealous about those people over there that have been successful. Now, don't do this. Remember my line from earlier. Other people's success, other people's failures have absolutely nothing to do with you. Don't be jealous of other people. Run your own race. Get up and work. Feelings are not facts. So use rejection to gain information, and whatever you may feel about a person or a situation is actually irrelevant. Never displace rejection into blame or jealousy. Rejection gifts us information. Rejection gifts us time for reflection. So use it to focus on yourself and move yourself to your future. 9, crucial one this. Okay, rejection is not a measuring tool. Rejection is not a metric. We do not assess our value as a researcher, as a teacher, as a human being via rejection. Do not allow rejection to bleed into insecurity. And remember, if you do anything in life, if you get out of bed in the morning and do something, you will be rejected. Rejection is not a measurement of anything except that you are alive. Expectations are irrelevant. Ego is irrelevant. Rejection is simply a demonstration that you got out of bed and you did something. So do not allow rejection to impact on your productivity or your capacity to enact decisions or particular behaviours. Rejection does not impact on your career, but how you frame, address and understand rejection does. 10. Remember your own insignificance. The gift of rejection is it reminds all of us that we are nothing. We are irrelevant, we live, we die, we are forgotten. All our stuff ends up in a skip. That's life. I always remember that line from Aranti Roy in The Cost of Living, quote, "To never forget your own insignificance," end of quote. Rejections remind us that none of us are actually that important. Our culture, though, at the moment is just a shambles. It's all about overplaying our role. It's about claiming other people's work, other people's stuff, making it reflect on us, to pretend that we're all terribly important, and therefore blaming other people for failures and rejections. But you see, rejection can also show us that we're investing time and work and consciousness in what other people are describing as valuable. So we must never allow our value as a human being or our values as a human being to be mitigated, compromised, or changed by the rejection of others. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.